Okay, we're up and running. So the time is 7:03. It is May 18th. I call the meeting of the Board of Selectmen of Newcastle, Maine. Board of Selectmen meeting. I guess this is an off-night meeting to order. We have, let's see, I think just one. I have one amendment for the agenda. We'll add a 5.4. We did receive an updated state license for the street vendor application that was in our packet last week. So we'll put that on a 5.4 to review and vote on that. Does anyone have any other amendments to the agenda for tonight?
Nope.
All right, all in favor of the agenda as amended? Okay, so we have reworked minutes. Thank you very much, Harriet, from March 23rd, April 6th, and April 20th. Do we have a motion on the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
All right, any questions, changes, anything anyone saw in the minutes that need?
6.1 on the, what is this, the 9th? No, the April one's March 23rd, this is what it is. 6.1, it says 3D is modeling complete. I don't know if that was a question or it's supposed to be a 3D modeling
is complete.
Right. Other than that, I think they're fine.
Yep. All right. All right, no further discussion about the minutes. All in favor of passing all three sets of minutes? All right, that passes 4-0. So we have no new business tonight. We're just discussing unfinished business, stuff left over mostly from our agenda last week. So we'll dive right into 5.1, Town Office Operations Modification Project. And a lot has happened in a week. So I'm actually just going to turn it over to John because he's sort of been, we put him in charge of this project, and I think he's seen and talked to a lot of people about it. So start us off.
Okay. Yeah. So we, after your meeting last time where you effectively gave authorization to spend the money that you have in the current reserves to complete the project, but obviously there was a lot of conversation about how to get to that place. So over the last week, I've reached out to several different contractors, and had a chance to meet with 2 of them on site. Additionally, Joel put some I don't know, concepts, but some detailed items in terms of how to complete the project from his seat. And I was able to share those with all of the folks who I've talked to. I expect that, I've kind of a range of individuals from an individual who, is him and another person kind of doing it, to some pretty large construction firms in the mid-coast. So we got a bit of a range, and we'll see where we get. I have numbers from one of the contractors, and I'm waiting to hear back from some others. The biggest issue still is availability. One larger firm that I talked to was interested, wanted to have a chat, but was going to have a hard time getting carpenters on site before July 1. So that's what we talked about. That's what the feeling was in the field, but I'm certainly still seems to be the case. If we were delayed enough to that point and we could wait that long, I think they would be a worthy firm to talk to. But I think really at this point we need to move ahead. Damerscotta opened sort of today, opened their office. They're by appointment only, so their staff is going to the door, letting people in who have made appointments, and then they're doing their business in the office. So there's going to be more and more, I think, that will be raised from residents of when are we opening. The Dropbox has been a huge help. I was in the office today, and we had someone who wanted to re-register or renew their mooring permit for the year. They just dropped it in the Dropbox, and away we went. So that's been a nice thing, but obviously to be able to open those doors, there's a little bit more work that needs to be done. So I expect probably by your next meeting on the 26th. 26th, we'll be able to talk about where that came down and what our options at that point are. Unfortunately, it just takes time for people to get numbers together, get materials lists and so forth. So it's the sooner I have it, the sooner we can get going. There's certainly an urgency on my part to get this done, but I've also talked about the option of making a smaller project in an attempt to try to get it done sooner. Everybody I've talked to is like the easiest way to move is to really get as much done as humanly possible as you can at one point in time. So that way you're not running back and forth. It's the most cost effective in their minds, as well as the most efficient for the town. Because of course, if we start doing those modifications, we got to close down areas. We got to move people into other parts. We got to, plastic up area, desks and the like while that work's going on. It becomes a real mess. So, they universally, that was the response I got. So at this point, we're not too much further ahead. I just really wanted to put this on here so that way you guys were all up to speed at the same level. And, I think a week from now, we'll have a much better, clearer picture of who can start, when they can start, how much, all that. So that's where we are.
Okay. Does anybody have anything they want to add to the?
Yeah, I just have a question. Being a public building, first of all, do we have to have a public bathroom? And secondly, I have some thoughts, only because we're going to have a map room and we are going to have people coming in. Is there a way that, we keep that door open, but you put a lock on it? So if anybody ever uses it, they have to come get the key at the desk, so that they know who's been in there. You don't have to, put a sign on that says public bathroom, but people do come in and use the map room. They'll be doing that going forward. I don't know how much time people spend in going through maps sometimes, but I know that's still going to be there. I just think that could be a win-win, only because, at least they know they'd have to have a key, and they would have to, the girls would know, or you, John, would know, who's in there when, but it still is accessible to the public if they needed it in a very kind of a way that I think could keep everybody safe. And it would save tearing out another door and putting something in. So just a thought. It just kind of makes sense to me, but.
Yep. Yeah, no, part of the desire to move some of the maps out of that area, we have some of those older maps in the meeting room where you all meet. But we also have some other maps on the other side there off of the counter. So the idea is to put them all in one spot, hopefully, and actually put them where Jim is right now. So that way, all of that, at least we'd be able to identify that area as a public space, like trying to minimize, and a whole lot more about this one than I do. So, but and kind of logically, my thought is the fewer number of places that we have to touch that the public is in, and we have to go up and clean on a periodic basis, seems to make sense. Try to shrink that area so that way we know exactly, we got to hit this area so many times a day, or once at lunch and once at whatever, to try to keep that all in one spot. The bathroom, it's a tough spot, but certainly we have to have the availability for the employees. I don't know that we need to have it available to the public per se, but we definitely have to have it available to employees. I'll check on that just to see what the plumbing code is, because the plumbing code is the one that kind of governs all that stuff. So it's certainly something we gotta talk about. There is obviously a concern with the use of that space, and we had a lot of people who are using that bathroom as a public bathroom, not just for people who are coming in and they're registering their car and he's not going to need to use the bathroom. That was really never the issue. What really became an issue for us came, over the last several years, where people would come into town, the lack of available public bathrooms in our section of the downtown caused a lot of people to come to our office specifically for that purpose, not for the purpose of using town services. It was, something else. So it became more than just the bathroom for the residents of Newcastle who are registering their car. It became, kind of like a destination of sorts, which is not really how I'd normally describe a bathroom, but I think you know what I mean. Like it became a thing where, oh, I'm going to go get a taco and I'll go across the street and use the bathroom, or and it was like, and I'm not saying the tacos caused it. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying like
Sure
there
you
was
did.
they moved across the river. But in all seriousness, like it became this thing. And so, there were some talks about public bathrooms generally in the downtown, and we even talked at one point about putting a portable a toilet outside so people had access to that, because it was kind of like two different things. It felt like, so I don't think that's necessarily the situation that you're talking about, but at least in terms of the crush that the office felt in terms of the use of that space, that was the predominant issue that we ran into. It's
Well,
less,
I think you could,
but
I
yeah.
think you could put a sign up though that says no public, no public bathroom available.
Mhm.
So, people don't come in looking for that, or they come in and they can say, if the girls don't know them, they can say, no, I'm sorry, we don't have a public bathroom.
Right. Yep. That's a good
So-
idea. Yeah. Signage helps. I mean, sometimes people don't want to read it, but you're right. It's a good start.
So when I did a little bit of looking into this, there's actually statutes and laws concerning if eating establishments must provide public facilities. Other public facilities that opt to provide a public restroom have to follow certain health and safety guidelines. But there's no, as far as I could find, there's no requirement that municipal buildings provide publicly accessible bathrooms to the public. If they do, they have to follow all this other stuff. That's all I could find.
I do
Well,
talk.
certainly if we have people that are, want to have an eating establishment like we do, we have the shuck station. And then if we have this vendor, maybe they either have to have a bathroom or they have to put in a porta potty. I mean, that should be part of the deal, a porta potty, I don't know.
We had a long conversation on that with the taco trailer. That's when this all came up a couple of years ago now. It was because the landlord does not want them to use their bathroom. So they thought it'd be great that if they used our bathroom, or if we built a public bathroom in the park. So that was gonna be one of my questions when we got to 5.4 was, what are we doing for this exact reason? Because I do know, talking to the staff is looking forward to not having that as a public restroom, because they're the ones that have to clean it, and they've had multiple times where it's just been a real mess, and shouldn't really be up to them to clean up somebody else's mess.
Well, I don't think you make it a public bathroom, but I don't know that you can't make it accessible to people that are in there and may need to go to the bathroom. That's my point. That's actually they're doing town business. That's my thought.
No, I like your idea, Wanda. We just have to make sure we're not, bringing in people from across the street again.
Right, and you don't have to put a bathroom sign on it. You don't have to just, if somebody's in there and I'm doing business and all of a sudden I don't, and I can say, God, you have a bathroom. They can hand me the key. They know they know who's been in there, and then you just lock it up after. But that's just my thought. I'm trying to make it a win-win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Think outside the box.
I think it's a good idea. And then we can restrict it to our residents, our customers per se. I know when I had my store, we didn't have a public bathroom. And a few times that we let people use it, my staff was upset.
So, good suggestions about the bathroom. And John, you'll pass those on, obviously, in your conversations with contractors. Do we have any other thoughts or, excuse me, concerns about the project as a whole or specifically?
The only downside I've run into so far is the auto lock for the front door.
Mhm.
I have a quote just for the lock, nothing else. Just to put the electrified lock in that door is $2,000. So we're gonna see if we can find some other pricing. But a little pricey to get them to come out. I emailed them back and said, ask if they could do any better than that. I don't think that's what I paid for more than that, you know, in other places. But, so.
Okay. Work continues. I think that, well, anyway, well, we'll get there. I guess next week we'll plan on discussing more of this in depth when we have more information and maybe prices and things like that all sort of gathered together.
I just,
Yeah,
so
go ahead, Joel.
have you talked to anyone specifically about any of the community room work as well, John?
Yeah, I've raised it as a kind of a secondary issue,
Yeah.
and so I've said, look at it, take your measurements, but give me the prices on the office work,
Right.
particularly the windows right away. And but we walked around and looked at all, they took the measurements of those spots. So we're or some have, we haven't gotten. I'm putting that kind of somewhat on the back burner just so I can get this thing going, and in the lead time it takes to order materials and get them delivered. Hopefully, get them in to get some numbers on the secondary piece of it. So it's definitely part of it, but I just want to make sure we get a crew over there as soon as humanly possible working.
Yep. Good.
Okay, so we'll put this back on the agenda for next week under unfinished business, and we'll take it from there. Let's move on to 5.2 FY21 budget. This kind of goes hand in hand with the next two as well. Everyone got a chance to review the sort of first draft warrant. And before we dive in, John, can you just, to the budget conversation, can you just review real quick the sequence of events leading up to the creation of this warrant, and specifically, are we looking to try and approve something tonight? Because I'm not sure that it's there. We can't do that.
No.
So this is the first draft, and then we have to have it by next week. You tell me. I can't.
Right. No, you're right about that. So this is a pretty rough version. Usually I don't send you what you see here. Usually by the time you've seen it, I've already, worked with Michelle, and I've worked with Peter, and I've, all that's pretty and nice, and there's not highlighted sections and all that. But I wanted you to see what, kind of what we're working off of. And this is not this. All I did here was include, this is kind of the rough draft version, but I included in the package just so you could see where we're starting from. For example, the articles 15 through 29 or so are items that really don't require, they're the ones that need the massaging and the work to try to get it to a point where we can then shrink the ballot effectively. But what I'm using is, what we have is exactly as we've kind of organized those budget articles. Again, I'm trying to keep them shorter, so I'm using only the subtotals for each item within the budget, but that's still the same numbers we talked about earlier, and everything else is the same. So there's a lot of work that needs to go into this warrant. It's going to look a lot different when you see it next week, but you can at least probably see how we progress from a warrant that kind of looks like what we've had in the past to something that will look probably a lot different. But this is the kind of the bones of it before we do the reconstructive plastic surgery to make it look ready for a ballot a week from now. So a week from now, I'll have something that looks a lot different that you would approve as your town meeting warrant.
Okay. So, I guess again, just while we're on the topic, and I know this is off topic a little bit, but it all just goes together here.
Mhm.
Is it still your understanding that what is happening from Secretary of State's office and legislature is that they're essentially going to be, I'm trying to phrase it delicately, but they're basically going to avoid dealing with the problem until they have to say, okay, well, you just have to keep voting the way you've always voted. We're not going to,
Right. Until it's too late.
until it's too late. Yeah. They're gonna
Yeah.
kind of let the deadline for making any substantive change pass and then say, well, we're stuck with having to do it the way we've always done it. You don't have any other option. You have
Right.
to assemble your residents. You have to.
Yeah. And you know, the excise tax, governor made some changes to excise tax collections, the laws regarding excise tax collections, liens, and so forth, the end of last week. And immediately, like within the next day, it was Wednesday, she announced it. On Thursday, she pulled it off the table because the Secretary of State's office said, whoa, 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 we can't do that. And I'm not sure who's right and who's wrong, but the point is like this is all uncharted territory. And so everyone is afraid to do anything. So the problem is, again, this is my opinion. My opinion is that we need to try to move forward in as close a way to what we've done in the past as we can and use methods of voting or methods of operations that are as close to that, so that way we don't get our hands slapped back by the Secretary of State's office. At the same time, our residents can feel somewhat confident that the method by which they're voting is as solid as it ever could be. So an absentee ballot where they request is maybe one way to do that. Now I heard of some towns up in north, Mapleton and you know, Castle, some of the towns around Presque Isle, they're actually calling the residents and saying, "Do you want an absentee ballot?" Now that's hard to do because it's hard to get phone numbers, but they're trying to find a way to keep people engaged in the process and yet not have the need to go out. There's a lot of folks that are trying to get people to vote absentee for various political reasons. We just want people to feel like they're safe and secure, that their vote counts and that it matters, and we want people to participate. So that's the whole point of all of this. And so you know, there's a lot of ways you can go. There's some towns that will go forward with their town meeting and they'll be spaced. The challenge, of course, is how do you find a venue for it? How do you manage it? How do you you know, there's a lot of things that go with an open town meeting that we just assume is just the way manner of operations. Will the clickers work if we're, you know, spread across the, you know, a 5-acre field? I don't know. I mean, maybe they will, maybe they won't. They've got a pretty good receiver on them, but you know, there's just a lot of different things. How do you talk if you have an enclosed space? What happens when you go outside those social distancing limits? You know, the 51st person on a 50-person limit. What do you do then? There's just a lot of questions. Whereas in this case, everyone pretty much knows how to request an absentee ballot, and if they don't, they call the office and we can get them one really easily. So we still have the polls open. People can still show up as it sits now, but I think the absentee ballot procedure is the easiest way for people's votes to count and have their voices heard. That still doesn't answer the public hearing question, and you know, I think we need to find you know, opportunities for that. We talked a little bit about that last time, but this method, I think, is the simplest and the most like what we've done in the past, and I think that's important. So that's how it looks, and you'll know. And the budget, you know, there's always some minor modifications to account for some things that have been worked on over the last couple of weeks, but we're still, as you saw, probably to move on to the budget piece, we're still at a mill rate of 17.9. And that's again estimated 1.1% increase in valuation, which I think is conservative. So we should have more wiggle room when it comes to comes to setting that mill rate when we get to that point.
That's more than a little conservative, as I understand it. We're probably more between at least 2 and 3%.
We could be, yeah, yep, very true.
So if evaluations are going up and the mill rate stays the same, then people's taxes are going to go up.
People's taxes will go up. So the areas that people have been that would be addressed would be those whose properties who have had work done. So usually the reval, you have, you know, pieces of property that haven't been seen or haven't been touched. What a lot of the additions or changes to valuation this year are related to construction. They're building related, so they're not merely you know, the reval was done and here's a bill, you should be surprised. This should be much more akin to, you put an addition on, this is the value of that addition and what your house is now worth.
So it's not across the board.
It's not across the board, no. Next year would be more of that across the board feel, where you'd have a situation where you know, land values would be impacted as well. This is going to be much more focused on the building schedules, and that, you know, this is the, you know, someone does a kitchen renovation and they don't, and no one knows, and it doesn't, you know, have a permit for it necessarily. How do you find that? Well, when we go going through and doing the reval work, that's how we're finding a lot of this value. But we're not talking about the let's see, what's the word I want to use? The overall quality of that valuation across the board, across the community. We're not balancing that out. We're only really talking about, oh, you have a fireplace. We didn't know you had a fireplace. Oh, you have, you know, this. Oh, we thought you're, you know, you had a 1.5 story. It's actually a 2-story. I mean, we're finding those types of more granular things that are impacting. But obviously, there's some larger, you know, changes as well. But when you beat the feet and you're going all over town, you're going to find a lot of that. And I think that's what Jim's finding.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, so, all right. Well, do you have anything else you want to say about the budget, John? Does anyone have any questions? I mean, let's open it up. Let's talk about budget. If anybody has any questions, I mean, I think your summary is not much has changed. It's been, you've been very conservative. You know, we'll see what we get when we actually do the commitment, and whenever the commitment happens, there may be more value. The mill rate may stay, may go down, may not need to overlay as much. There's flexibility in that give and take. So we haven't, you know, cut all the flexibility out of it, but we've still met our overall goal of holding the mill rate. Anybody?
So I have one question on Article 7, which is the salaries, and it may just be because it's not complete because we don't have all of John's numbers yet, but it looks like it's gone down, which I know it's not going to if we're going to give people raises. So unless I'm reading it wrong. So is that because John's numbers aren't all in there yet?
Sorry, I muted myself. Yeah, no, actually everything is in there. The difference in salaries is largely relating to that last year we were unsure how we were going to structure the deputy clerk position, not the part-time deputy, and so we made that a little bit larger than probably we would have anticipated. I've budgeted to put it even a little bit more than we're currently using, but not more than what we were budgeting last year. So that's why, though it looks, though the salaries number is down about, it's about $3,500. It's largely
not much, but
but that includes everything with what my contract stands. You know, so that's everything.
Okay.
That's as of the moment.
Joel, Brian, any comments, questions?
No, I think we were able to accomplish more than just one of our goals here. You know, I think it's good. I think we've able to plan ahead and get some things done and get some things moving, and hold that mill rate, which I think is really important. So
Yeah, it's hard to. You've done a bang up job, John. You did a great job. This is exactly, I think, what we asked for. So kudos. Thank you.
So I just have one thought, and of course I'm the covert queen and I apologize for that, but I have lots of concerns. I know that, we're not out of this yet. And who knows what the future is going to bring. I mean, we're seeing it still hitting the state. As we start to open up, the numbers daily go up a little, not a lot, thank God. But there's still a lot of people out of work. And when I look at everything that we're going to do in the next year, I mean, I worry about, we hear all the time that fuel taxes for the, are way down, and excise taxes way down at the state and the federal level because of, people aren't driving. So for both of those reasons, excise taxes are down too. So, and when I look at what we're going to do, we're going to get to increase salaries for the employees. We're doing the LED lighting, which is going to save us money in the long run, but it's going to cost us in the next year or two. We're upgrading our software. We're upgrading our phones. We're doing the North Newcastle paving, the Academy Hill project. We're finishing the West Hamlet Road. I'm just wondering if, we can take a pause, because really there's only so many places that we can take a pause and kind of look, because we don't know what the future is going to bring. And if we do those 3 major projects this year, with all the other stuff we're doing, I think we've accomplished a lot. And, we could save close to a couple $100,000 if we just didn't do, the Stonebridge Circle, the rest of the Academy Hill, and the Glidden Road project this year. We can do it next year. Seth's already, God love him, but he's already behind on the Bristol Road project because the weather hasn't cooperated. Mother Nature has not been nice to us lately. And I'm not thinking that that's going to change anytime soon. I mean, we've got more snow in May than we've had forever. A lot of rain's coming down. Yeah, I just wonder if we just shouldn't take a little bit of a pause, put the brakes on a little bit, save a little money, because there's another year coming. I worry that there's a lot of people out of work, that a lot of people are going to struggle with their taxes. I worry about that. There's a lot of people that are going to have a hard time. There's a lot of businesses that are not going to survive this. So I have concerns. I just want to throw that out there.
So, it sounded like, I mean, there were a couple of things, what I heard in there were a couple of different ideas. I guess I kind of put your comments into sort of 2 categories. There's the idea of monies raised through taxes, which is the budget we're talking about. But then there's also the idea of the work plan. And I mean, we talk about them together. We have to talk about them together because you develop the work plan and you figure out a budget for it. But really, you kind of do them independently. And the way that we've started last year treating that whole subject is that for capital projects, which is I'm assuming what you're talking about because you mentioned the capital projects, not the annual projects. We established a reserve account for the capital projects. And we have a work plan, and so we've got the money to do the work plan. And I would say, at least from my perspective, and I am not disagreeing with you at all about uncertainty and people's ability to pay. However, historically, we don't have a tax collection problem. We didn't have one going through the 2008 recession. So, we collect, I mean, I don't want to quote numbers up, but like the numbers that we send to foreclosure, I mean, they're crazy low. especially for in comparison to other towns in Lincoln County. And so I don't know that there's, I know this is completely new, uncertain, but there's no historical precedent, even through the housing crisis, that shows us that we could or should anticipate a problem with tax collections. So that's kind of one issue. But I would say that, I mean, if you're concerned about getting the projects done, like that's the plan, the project list. Raising the money is a separate issue, and I honestly think we're looking at like a win-win with this budget. Whereas if we raise the money and then we don't actually get to do everything on the list, it's sitting in a reserve account to be spent. And if it doesn't happen for 2 years, you know, in some ways that's not a bad thing. It's there, and maybe a year from now when we're having this conversation and we are looking back and saying, okay, we actually had a problem with taxes, we've already got the money in the reserve account to kind of keep those projects rolling through. I think it's smart where we've met the goals. We're not going to be increasing taxes, you know, holding the mill rate. I say we go ahead with the budget as proposed, and the plan, the work plan, is always something that can be discussed as the road commissioner comes back and says, like you said, look, we've had a ton of rain, we're not going to be able to grade the roads, and we got to push this project off. You know, I mean, that happens every year. I mean, it happens every year. But those are my two thoughts. My two thoughts.
But I think a couple of meetings ago, we talked about, you know, we're using some of our reserve that we have in the bank. And luckily we're a town that has money in the bank, which is, we're setting pretty, and that's a wonderful thing. But I also know that, you know, Joel has talked a lot about the buildings that, you know, we're coming to new buildings. We're coming to either major work at the town office or building a new building. You know, the firehouse is going to need some work. There's a chance we're going to need a new fire truck. There's other projects too that we're going to need that reserve for, to help us with also. So, you know, I'm not saying we don't want to get all these extra jobs done, but you know, we are doing, I mean, I look at the list of what we're doing just with the software and the phones, and we're doing an incredible amount of stuff for this town this year, which is amazing. I just would like us to see a little pause and maybe not spend the reserve or not all of that reserve that we're pulling out, just so that we have it. Just, you know, we're going to know hopefully next year at this time when we're all sitting here, or, you know, some of us will be sitting here, you know, how we made it through this. And I'd like to still be sitting pretty on a lot of money in the bank so that we can move forward and keep our town in good straits. So that's where I'm at. I want to throw that out there.
I don't want to, maybe I'm hearing wrong. So we look at this in two different ways, right? We have reserves that we set aside, like we have the money in the reserve account now to do North Newcastle.
Yeah.
But then we have the general fund, which is at $1.6 million, right? That's not scheduled to be spent for, well, this year we're pulling some of it out to help with the budget. But typically that money's not there in a reserve account to be spent. That money is there.
Sorry, Joel, I muted you.
You know, that money is our safety net, and that's what that's there for. So it's two different subjects. So raising the taxes, as Ben said, and putting in a reserve account for projects is one thing, but the general fund is a totally different dollar amount. And that's that $1.6 million we have in the bank. That isn't budgeted. It's not scheduled to go towards anything.
Right, but we're looking to use some of that this year is what I'm understanding.
We I forget what the dollar amount was, but you're right, we decided we use some of it.
We're currently over what you know, we're really like encouraged to have by quite a bit. So it's I think it's important to spend some of that money and get some of those projects done, because that's always the balance that we have, is getting the projects done and finding the funding for it. And we have it. The taxpayers have already paid for it. This is money that we've already paid in that that we're now just using to continue the work that needs to get done, you know, to keep up with our plans.
And on the project side, people I've talked to are glad we're moving forward with the road projects and still getting things done. And they're also really glad that we're, you know, doing our best to hold taxes, you know, for year 5. So.
Yeah, I think this would be the, if we committed at 17.9, we'd be 5th year in a row at this level or less. We were up to 18.05 two years ago, and we've come down. I mean, just a little bit, but
Yeah, 2 or 3, yeah.
Maybe it was 3. So, yeah, I mean, I you know, Joel's point is a good one. I think I tried to make that at a prior meeting that you know, when I'd been thinking about it, it was we're our rainy day fund, our general fund, that $1.6 million, we're so far beyond what you know, what the recommendation levels are, both from MMA and from our auditors, that it becomes a question of at what point do we say, well, it's irresponsible to not spend the money that the taxpayers have put in to spend it on their behalf on projects and on budget like we're doing. I think that it is necessary, and it's important that we don't hoard money beyond what is reasonable to have in reserve. And we're so far past that. I don't know how to put your mind at ease, Wanda. We have 2 different perspectives on how much money is appropriate to have in reserve, because, you know, when I came on the board, we had nothing, and now we have so much that I worry we have too much. So it's
and Wanda, this is our first year actually touching any of that money in the 10 years I've been on the board, because we spent 10 years trying to raise that money and now have money in the bank. So we've been really concerned with what we've done with that.
I grew up with a very frugal father who did very well over the years, and taught me to be very frugal, and taught me gave me some amazing values, I think. And he wouldn't be happy if I didn't fight for everything I could to maybe even decrease the mill rate. He'd be fighting for that. So I'm my father's daughter. So, you know, I grew up in a very frugal, had what we needed, but, you know, we had red tractors. We didn't have green ones because green paint costed more. So they cost a lot more, and we had red tractors. So that's me. That's who I am. So I got to throw those things out there. That's how I look at it.
Oh, always good. And I second that. I second that. How you know, I share that with you, how I grew up, and I think we have a lot of those things and those values in common. I just have a different, I think, perspective on this budget in terms of how that's accomplished, because I see it being accomplished in this budget. So, all right. Do we have anything else on the budget? I'm going back up here. Hold on.
Get my text, John?
No. Let me see. Oh, yes. Okay. Good point. So, yeah, there is one other piece of this puzzle. We were talking about, so in the latest draft of some of this, we were talking about how to handle some of these networking needs, and by making some changes, the door is a key piece of this. Okay, so obviously the access to the office is important, and what we've been talking about is some sort of method to buzz people in and buzz people out, and so that way there's an easy way, because the way we're, even as it is now, if we were to do this by appointment, let's say, you got to get out, you go around, you let someone in, you go back behind the counter, you do your work with them, then you go in, you let them out, and it becomes this whole dance that just seems kind of um, you know um, non-productive, I suppose, for what ability to get people in and out. So one thing we talked about as part of this is to modifications of the doors, so that way we can handle that a little bit more remotely. But also there's a number of different pieces of it. So what we've done is strip out some of the different support related issues. So the technical support for the programs that and the hardware that we're installing, to fall within what we have in hand for our computer reserve. We're gonna go back. We're dropping down to a 1-year warranty, or not warranty, but a 1-year service agreement in terms of their coverage. So in doing from now, we would have to re-up into a new level of service. 3 years, I think, is the number that Brian and I were talking about. There's a level of the cost to that. There's a question of where to put that, and whether you put it in the new year, which would be 22, but those renewals could hit right around now. Now there's a potential that we could, by the time things are installed and everything, that we may be able to narrow that window, but we're kind of on that shoulder of, is it a FY21 cost or an FY22 cost? So I guess my question is, do we put money inside here for extending that support range to that 3-year, or do we try to use existing funds and use it in FY22, which would be not this budget, but the following budget? And if we have to come up with it now, it probably makes sense to add more money into computer support, in the regular maintenance or the operations section of the budget. It's a flip of a coin, but it's not a small sum. We're talking in some of the neighborhood of 7,000. But that's one of those. Is it next year cost or is it a this year cost?
And I'm sorry, what does this have to do with the phone system that Brian's putting in, or the computer system upgrade?
Yeah, it's all of it. Yes, is the answer, because it's all integrated. So we've got the networking, which is all of the backbone behind not just the phone system, but our computer network. There's cameras. We're going to camera the outside, the counter area. We're going to let's see, and then we're also going to integrate some sort of lock for the front door. So all 4 of those pieces all kind of going together with one. They're all hands within the same glove. And so the question is, we got a 1-year agreement on the glove, which is great. It gets us through probably almost all the way through this budget that we're talking about here. The question is, do we put money aside, because the expiration of that will hit either in June or in July, and we're not exactly sure how that would be. If it didn't, we could carry it forward, and then it's money we wouldn't have to raise next year. But if we do it now, then at least the monies are set aside. Is Brian, is there anything that I I missed, didn't accurately say, or anything I missed?
No, I think you're good. Our question was, do we put it in this budget we're looking at now? Thing is, equipment's ordered, it's coming. So pretty much when the equipment lands, the support starts. So let's say the support starts June 1. It's going to expire next year on May 31, or many days are in May. All right. So we're going to have that month of no support coverage, which isn't a huge deal. But the support guarantees us all especially the firewalls and switches, is all the software upgrades throughout the year. you know, and all the antivirus programs and everything else we're doing. So all part of the firewall, which keeps all the towns, you know, software based, all their server and everything safe. So I guess I'd say we throw it in this year. We're talking, I told John, throw 7,500 at it. I don't think it'll be that much next year, but you know, that was a quick number I grabbed early today for it. So I'm trying to put all this equipment in the $8,500 this year. And the only way to keep adding more equipment and to stay in with that $8,500 is to reduce back the support we're buying this year. You know what I mean? So we went from, hey, we're going to buy a new switch and a firewall and phone system to get this done. Now we're talking adding a camera system, adding the door lock, you know, which is balloon this all up. We're still going to stay, except for the lock itself, underneath the $8,500, but it's just for cutting back on the support we're purchasing today. So
you want to put this, okay.
I want to put it in the 21 budget.
You put it in 21 budget, which is not this year. It's the coming year.
It's July 1, 21. Yeah, we can't add anything to this year's budget.
And the question would be, at that point, that would be a 3-year or that would be a 1-year?
We'd buy a 3-year at that point.
So I say we deal with it. I say we deal with it in a year.
No, I think we put it in this budget.
That's what I mean. We put it in.
Buy it next June.
We put it in the FY21 budget that we're talking about right now, and deal with it next year.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So when we talked about this last week, we wasn't talking about the cameras and the door locks.
Correct. Ben echoes in John's notes last week. We didn't discuss it in our meeting, but the note said the girls would like to have an auto lock on the door and an intercom system, so that they can control the door from behind the counters, not always going out and having to get up close to people. So adding that stuff in is, you know, what changed this around. So it's an additional equipment.
Once we're reopened though, how much would that happen?
Well, when we reopen fully, it might not, but when are we going to do that? That was, me and John were having that conversation today. Are we going to do all this extra for a month? Or is it going to be for 6 months or a year? You know, when are we going to go back to just unlocking the front door again to the town office?
Well, if we're doing all this work to open, I can't imagine once we get the go ahead that we can't open full time. Once we have all these secure, you know, the plexiglass and the walls and everything in place, that's sort of why we're doing that, I think, so that we can open full time and be safe.
We would still have to limit the number of people in the town office. That's I think the purpose of all this stuff is
I think that's where it comes into, where the girls are thinking, then we can, you know, maybe limit to 2 people in there at a time. We don't have somebody at the door. You're not doing like the bookstore in town is doing, grab your puzzle piece, and if there are none, don't come in. Yeah. And we don't have people to stand at the door like other places are doing. And town office gets busier than what you think it does.
No, I understand that. I understand that.
This is an ask from the staff. So we're trying to kind of meet their needs and ease their concerns around safety. So.
The other, if I could maybe also just add to part of this, you know, we don't yet know what our costs will be for the construction portion of the building. So part of this is we're unsure what we're going to get back for numbers. My intent in terms of talking was about what our options were relating to the doors or the locks or what have you. It's kind of in this gray area of is it networking, is it computer related, or is it, you know, buildings, you know, and so it kind of falls into both categories in my mind. If we can get to a point where our numbers are low enough with our building contractor, we could use the funds to out of that budget to deal with the door and the door,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the push bar and all that other stuff. We could deal with it that way. The challenge is, of course, is we don't yet know what those numbers are. you will be able to change numbers next week. So we could just, if you want, you could say, we agree with the budget, but we're going to leave an allowance, and next week you could say to me, okay, it's this or it's that. We could have it in that type of scenario where if the numbers come in and we can fit in what we hope to accomplish out of the building reserve, including the door, great. If we can't, then you could say, well, then we're going to add in X number of dollars into the budget so that way we can accomplish what we want to accomplish next year. You could take that approach too. That way we're not, kind of going Karnak here and trying to guess what we think it might be. We're going to have some numbers that should be actionable a week from now.
Well, I say we do that. We've been made aware of what the potential costs of some of the costs are. We'll have a more clear, rounded picture next week. I say we go with John's plan. But I think, at least from my perspective, controlling access to the lobby, the options are you put up a sign that says, please limit 2-3 people at a time in the lobby, and you trust folks to do that. They peek their head in, they see there's 2 or 3 people in there, they don't come in. Or we install a door buzzer intercom thing. You hit the button and say, okay, you talk to someone who picks up the phone and they say, well, look, we've already got 3 people. Can you just hang out for a minute while we finish up with them? And then when someone comes out, you can come in. That's the question. And the question is, how much is that worth?
Right. The other thing we're hoping too is that with the CARES Act, that some of this will be reimbursable. Of course, we don't know what that'll be yet because nobody said how the funds from the CARES Act can be used yet. So.
But we're chasing that down.
We are chasing that. But we're waiting for the state and the feds to say, hey, you can do this. You can use this money for this. And it's not just us. It's a lot of other towns I'm dealing with too on the same boat. So.
Well, I think, this is are there anything else we need to kind of know about as potential, costs associated with the project and or impact to budget, regarding the project and any of this that we haven't talked about?
It's the only one I'm aware of.
This is the problem with the way this works in our budget cycle. You always have better information right before, at the 11th hour and the 59th minute. Every single year I've done a budget, what's this? This is my 15th budget or something. In 15 budgets, I bet 15 of them have come together in the last minute. And it's all because everyone talks and talks and talks. And I don't say that's a bad thing, but hopefully you're getting a better idea. Nothing is ever a final thing until that warrant's, stabilized. So you guys are doing your job. Everybody's doing great, and no idea is a bad idea. And it's just unfortunate. It's like this every single year, that we always have to just keep working at it. And hopefully we get the best result when we hit print on the warrant that you all hopefully approve and sign.
Well, thank you guys for continuing to work on it, and I guess we'll revisit both the town office modification project and the budget next week.
Did the scope I sort of put together on that work with everyone and their thoughts on the town office work? I just wanted to give all the contractors a even playing field so that they knew what they were bidding on. Is that good with everybody?
I thought it was great.
That's good. Okay, good.
Yeah, really good. Yeah.
And I'll say that the contractors I talked to, they felt it was very helpful to have that and the sketches. Yeah. So we didn't write up a traditional bid spec, but I think between the work that you guys put together, at least it allows us to frame the conversation. There's a lot in terms of programming about how the space works that still needs a lot of work, and so thankfully we the four of you or five of you, hi Carolyn, are sharpening this and trying to make it a better project. So it's going to be as good as it possibly can be when we get to the end of it. So thank you to Joel and all of you for really all of you have put time in and thought into this, which is making it better, and it's going to be a better project. So thanks for you guys doing what you do. Staff appreciates it.
So let's move on to 5.2 and 5.3, the Charter Commission warrant article and the Simplified Zoning Code warrant article. Both of these would require public hearings.
The entire warrant will require a public hearing.
Well, sure.
Yeah, but these two as well. Yeah.
Where are we on any of this? I'll be honest with you. I had I had hoped to have a lot more time that has completely evaporated. I really don't know. I don't understand people who say they're bored. I am so busy right now. It's insane. I haven't had the time and the energy when I sit in my desk at 10 o'clock at night to work up a whole thing about the charter and what it is and how it would benefit the town and what the pros and the cons are. And I had always intended to do that, and I haven't had time. So that's where I am with it.
Nor have I haven't had time to work on that at all. To write up something, at this point, especially with this going as a referendum vote for everything, I hate to do it, but I think we have to hold off. Because it's going to be a conversation, and we can't do that at the polls. So
I think with both of them, there's so much public input that we need. And I don't think, for the charter and the code, you got a one-time shot at it. If it goes down, it's pretty hard to bring it back. So I think we have to be able to get out there and sell it to the people, because once they vote it down, we're done. Without an incredible amount of work.
Yeah, I would say the charter we push off till next town meeting, next June. And I think the code, we try to get it on November's ballot. We try to get our education done between now and then.
I think if we waited on the code, we would really have to set that date of November as the time we're going to do it, sort of regardless, because we could be in the same position again in the fall. It's not, there's so many unknowns. I do know that, I kind of feel like we're going to be seeing more pressure from certain kinds of development with how low the numbers have been in our county, in our area, and how good our schools are, and and relative to most places in the world, how low our taxes are. And I just don't want to let this. I don't want to let this fall by the wayside, and I don't want to put all the years of work and all the people who put in their time and really worked hard to get this done to just sort of let it just sit idle. So I'm fine with waiting, but I just think we need to move on to alternative forms. Is that we're in a different world now, and the idea of having a big group of people together to discuss things, I don't see that happening before November. So if we're going to wait, and we're going to wait for a reason, then we have to come up with a solution. Otherwise, I think it's worth moving forward.
So of the two, both are important. Of the two, I think the most pressing, urgent need of the town is obviously a new land use ordinance, a new code that will better serve the town and replace the very broken code we have now. And the charter is, it's not to say that the charter is unimportant. In fact, one of the things that continues to impress upon my mind is that with a charter and certain structures in place within the structure of a charter, being able to deal with emergency situations such as what we're dealing with now, we'd have that sort of thing in place. We'd have our own guidance locked in. We'd have the ability to say, this is how we want to operate during these times. And we wouldn't be waiting in a lot of cases for the state to make up their mind to tell us how they want to do it, or to grant us permission retroactively for something that we did months before they thought to even do it. Just as an example, a charter can really provide us with a lot more freedom to operate our town the way we want to operate the town. And that's not to say me, I mean all of us residents of Newcastle. It gives all of us a lot more freedom. Or it could. That being said, the code, I think Joel's right. We have to commit to that November and get it done. We've now pushed it every June and every November for 4 years, 3 years. I mean, it just keeps getting pushed and pushed and pushed, and it's fine. I mean, it is, because it wasn't done and it needed more work, and that's great. But we got to figure out how to do the necessary public engagement and education, and get it done. If that means that we have to appoint another committee or a small group of people who are just tackling that one issue and it's not the board, maybe that's a good way forward. Maybe it's new people. I don't know, but it does seem like, you know, the issues that the board has to deal with on a weekly basis eat up a lot of time, and we'll find ourselves in September going, what are we doing for November? And there's not enough time all of a sudden. That's where the board will be. So not only do we have to make the decision if we're going to put it on to November, we should set another deadline in which to get the actual, you know, education piece done prior to. I mean, that's a date that should be talked about and set like now. So I am in support of it. I agree. It's in the best interest of the town to not vote on either a charter commission or a change to the land use ordinance at this annual town meeting.
I agree. I think we do have to put a meeting together, maybe with the land use ordinance committee or zoning committee, we forget what we're calling this time around, and figure out how we're going to get this presented so we can set some solid dates and figure out the best way to do it. Is it this? Is it Zoom? If we can't meet, if it's, you know, is it multiple meetings of less than 50? I don't know how we'll do that either. But I agree, we need to get working on that. It's already, you know, middle of May. November will be here before we know it.
Right. We do also have our tax bill that goes out. We've always got that to add things in. We could add a letter in with that, with links to online platforms for people to look at the information if they're interested in it, educate themselves, a place for them to ask questions and get responses. I mean, I just think we have to think in a non-traditional manner here, because we're dealing with a different thing. So if we have to let the old ways of doing it, which didn't always work that well anyway, sort of, you know, we have to try something new, I think, to get this done. And I really want to get it done. So
Good. Maybe we can find somebody, that work with LCATV and come up with some way to do some short presentations on different sections of code.
Yeah. And we can post those on the website.
Put them on the website.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to go more than 30 minutes because people get worn out after that. But maybe we can do multiples of smaller sections. I don't know. Conversation for a different night. But
It's a great idea.
All right, so let's. Well, why don't I propose two things, and then we'll take an action here. We'll take a vote. I guess I propose that we move the charter commission discussion ahead a year, and we start talking about that sometime in probably January. And then for the code, we move that forward to the November vote, and we schedule, or we invite the zoning committee to meet with us at the soonest available time. I'm not going to suggest next week, but I might suggest 2 weeks.
I think once we nail down the budget, then we can move forward.
Well,
But like John said, is the budget going to be done? But I mean, I think we got to get through the next meeting and get that done, and then.
Yeah. No, yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Not next week. Next week is the 25th. So, and then we don't meet. We would meet normally on the 8th of June and the 22nd of June. So we could ask the zoning committee if they want to meet on either the 1st or the 15th, and we could have a meeting to discuss ideas for, public presentation, education.
And just an FYI, the 25th is Memorial Day, so I think wasn't we talking the 26th?
Yeah, I think so, Wanda. And if you're looking ahead to June, you probably also want to be thinking about what night you want to hold your public hearing for the end of June for those ballot questions for your town meeting, your referendum. So just in terms of if you're thinking about thinking out the month, that would be probably earlier in June would be a better way to go. I think, as you said, the 1st or 15th.
Well, if we're going to hold public hearings in the manner that I talked about last week, which was to, open a public hearing at a meeting and accept public comments in written or, recorded phone call or whatever we could do, we decide on the different mediums, we collect them for a period of time, and then we meet again to close the public hearing and sort of report out what we received for public comments. If we do that, then I would say that we should start the public hearing on the warrant probably on June 8th at our regularly scheduled selectmen's meeting and run it for 2 weeks and close it on the 22nd. So we'd accept public comments for those 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I think we roll it back a week. I think we start the 1st, close on the 15th, and pull a meeting on the 15th to answer questions. Or answer all the questions on the 22nd. Because if we give them 2 weeks to get us questions, we need time so we can all read the questions and put our answers out. So
good point. We'd have to, okay. Well, that goes to whether or not we're meeting with the zoning committee on the 1st. I guess if we did meet, we're going to meet every single Monday again, aren't we? This is what happens every single year is we end up meeting every single Monday of May and June.
right. So if we do the public hearing on the 1st, we can meet with zoning on the 15th and close the public hearing because that's only going to take a second to close it.
Well, no, we got to report out what we
do that the following week on the 22nd. So if we're gonna get emails and whatnot and give people 2 weeks, we've got to have time to respond back to those. And I don't think we'll be able to do it at, right at the end of the 14 days.
Yeah, sure.
So
Okay. So we would open, okay, so you're suggesting that we open public comments on the referendum on the 1st of June. We close the public hearing on the 15th. We stop accepting public comments on the 15th. That gives the town office and us 7 days to craft responses to the public comments, at which point on the 22nd, our normally scheduled meeting, we would answer those questions, and that would be that.
Yeah. I think it's the only way you can really do it.
So you guys, and I guess you've already said this, but so you don't want to invite the public into a Zoom meeting?
It's chaos. I mean, it's utter chaos. I've been in larger Zoom meetings, and the trend was actually, it's interesting because when this all started and everybody just hopped on Zoom, I was in a couple that were just like, I don't even know, it was pages and pages and pages, right? And I mean, it was chaos, it was madness. And then recently I did one last week, and they just locked literally everything down. Like, there might have been 1,000 participants, I don't even know, because everything was completely hidden. It was like just a PowerPoint presentation. They were like, welcome to the blah, blah, blah. Here's, and like, that was the participation. People were there, but everything was completely locked. And that, I don't know what you guys' experience have been, but that's the trend that I've seen happening in the time.
We've done a lot of through Maine Help, and you don't talk like live. Like I wouldn't chime in and talk, but I would be able to, send my question in, so the question gets answered in real time. You don't actually get to like ask your question verbally, but you type it in, it gets sent. There's somebody, whether it would be John or Harriet or somebody who's kind of collecting that data. Those questions are asked and those answers are given at that time. That's how I've seen it work fairly well. And there's a lot of people, typing in questions, and sometimes it's the same question. So you kind of need people to kind of be grouping the questions together. But it does work.
How large are those meetings?
Those meetings are anywhere from an hour to hour and a half usually.
No, how many participants?
It's throughout Maine Health. I think we've had as many as 100 people. Depends on who can jump on at the Maine Health level. It's all the administrators of all the different buildings, a lot of doctors on it. A lot of people like myself who are, kind of asking the questions. And so, I mean, that's how I've seen it work. But they mute everybody as far as being able to participate verbally. But it does work.
I've been in some of those, and a lot of times the questions outrun the time frame we set for the meetings. So they still don't get their answers unless, it's done at a later date, or they make them provide an email address to email them their answers. So it all comes down to how many people would participate. Are we going to get 5 or are we going to get 100?
Well, and there's no way of knowing. And I guess my initial concern about Zoom meetings hasn't changed, which is that opening up Zoom meetings to public participation really limits who can participate to those who have access to the technology, can make it work, know how to run it. And I'll be honest with you, I think that disenfranchises an awful lot of people, especially when we're talking about voters. And I think that everyone, the reason town meeting and public participation works is that most everyone either has a car, can get a ride, and they can get to a meeting, and they can get to a town meeting. They can come in to a selectmen's meeting, voice their concerns directly face to face. But if we limit it and say, you can only participate if you have a computer, your internet connection works, you know how to operate the software, you don't have a problem with your microphone, your camera, or any other device, and we can't provide tech support, or you have to pay someone else to provide tech support just so you can participate, I am unhappy with setting that as the standard for being allowed to participate in local government. everyone has a mailing address or a way to mail something to the town office. If they don't, they can call. Most everyone has a phone. They can call and leave a voicemail. Those who can do email. I'm happy with those forms of communications because I feel like most people have access to those and we're not unnecessarily restricting their ability to participate. That's really my concern with Zoom. That's where I stand. If I was someone who didn't feel as comfortable with technology, I'd be mad by hearing the Board of Selectmen saying, well, you can only participate in the public hearing if you have a computer.
You'd have to do a combination of both things. We could open up like Wanda's suggesting and open a chat room and have Harriet monitor the chat room so we can answer questions at the end. And then at the same time, leave all the other avenues open for 2 weeks. Don't know if it'll work, don't know how well it would work. And whatever questions we don't get to, we could answer on the 22nd. And otherwise, people can still email us their questions, mail us their questions, call the town office with their questions. So we could do both. And if the Zoom isn't working good for us, we can always, halfway through it, say, sorry, this really isn't working. Please email your questions to us. So,
hold on.
Wanda.
We lost Wanda. Let's just pause for a second here, guys.
Yep.
So somebody said it was going to be close to 80 on Friday. Is that true?
I heard 78.
78?
With 85-mile-an-hour winds. With the way the season's been, it's like.
Here we go. Hello?
All right.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, still connecting.
I don't know what happened, but I lost everybody. So sorry.
Are you in Patton? There's no internet.
No, I'm in Newcastle.
Oh, that's even
I
worse.
don't know, it just shut down. I don't know what happened. A glitch.
All right. Well, so let's bring this up again. We'll put it on the agenda for next week. Does that sound good to everyone? And we'll make a decision. Let's really think about it. Talk, have one-on-one conversations or thoughts about, best practice, best way we can, best serve the town of Newcastle. It's a challenge. There's no perfect answer, and there's no answer that is going to be either acceptable or please everyone. And I'm sorry to everyone that may be listening that we do not have a good, perfect solution for this problem.
Our next
only
meeting
get to choose the least worst answer.
So our next meeting is Tuesday the 26th.
Tuesday the 26th. Okay. All right. So moving on, I think at this point we don't have a town administrator report and communication. John, are you frozen? No, you're there.
Nope.
Spacing.
It looked like you were frozen. Town administrator report and communications we'll have on our regular agenda next week. We don't have warrants because those will be next week. We don't have any assessors, so we have a small executive session to discuss the town manager contract. So at this point, I would entertain a motion to go into executive session under MRSA section 405(6)A.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded.
Okay. All in favor of moving into executive session? Thank you. Now, John, email us a new Zoom link, please.
I can stop the live stream.